Commander Varen, the feared leader of the Orion Dominion, moved through the dimly lit corridors of his flagship. The ship hummed with energy, a soft vibration beneath his feet, but his mind was elsewhere. He had just returned from a long mission on a distant colony, a mission that had demanded every ounce of his strength and every decision he had made. He thought he knew everything aboard his ship, every soldier, every servant, every corner of his domain. Yet that certainty was about to shatter in a way he could never imagine. As he reached the central chamber, a faint, unusual sound stopped him. It was soft, almost delicate, unlike the harsh, mechanical noises of the ship. His instincts, honed over centuries of command, alerted him immediately. Someone was here and something was happening. He tightened his fists and stepped closer, his armored boots echoing through the metallic floor. And then he saw her. Mira, a human servant he had known for years, stood in the middle of the chamber. But she was not performing any ordinary duty. She held something, someone, in her arms. The soft hum of the ship seemed to fade as Varen's eyes focused, and his heart, which rarely betrayed him, skipped a beat. In her arms was a small boy, no older than 3, wrapped in a blanket that barely contained him. Varen froze. The child's eyes met his, wide and unafraid. There was something familiar in those eyes, something that belonged to him yet seemed entirely new. He felt a strange warmth, a pull in his chest, a sensation he had never experienced before. Humans were fragile, weak, and insignificant compared to the Orions. And yet the boy in Mira's arms, he looked exactly like Varen. What was this? Varen's voice was low, controlled, but carried an edge of shock that even he could not fully mask. Mira did not flinch. Her posture remained steady, her gaze unwavering, as if she had expected this moment all along. "This is your son," she said simply. No fear, no hesitation, just the truth. Varen's mind raced. Impossible. He had never considered such a thing. Relationships, attachments, family, these were concepts he had long abandoned. The Dominion demanded strength, not sentiment. Weakness was punished. Yet here, undeniable proof confronted him, a living testament in the tiny form of his son. His fingers tightened at his sides. Why did you—" he began, but words failed him. Mira's calm presence filled the room like a steady flame, and he realized that his anger, confusion, and disbelief were all converging. "To protect him," Mira said softly, almost whispering, but her voice carried authority. "You were away. The colony was under threat. He had no one. I could not leave him." Varen felt an unfamiliar knot of guilt twist in his chest. He had left orders for safety, for security, for protocols, and yet, despite all his preparation, a single human woman had acted where he had hesitated. She had saved something precious, something he hadn't realized existed until now. He stepped closer, observing every detail, the tiny hands clutching the blanket, the soft rise and fall of the boy's chest, the delicate features that mirrored his own. Every instinct in him screamed to command, to take control, to enforce the rules of the Dominion. But another, quieter voice, a voice he had never acknowledged, whispered in his mind, "Protect, nurture, care." "Do you understand what this means?" Varen asked, his voice barely more than a growl. "Humans are not supposed to interfere. You could have been punished. Or worse." "I know," Mira said, her eyes holding his gaze, "and I accept the consequences. But he is alive. He is your son. That is all that matters." Varen felt the weight of centuries of discipline, of pride, of power, clash against the simple truth of the moment. In that small chamber, surrounded by cold metal and the hum of the ship, the commander of the Orion Dominion realized that his life, his rules, and his universe were about to change forever. The child stirred, looking up at Varen with innocent trust, and in that instant, the Orion warrior felt a trembling in his heart, a feeling he did not understand yet could not deny. For the first time, Commander Varen faced something greater than strength, than fear, than honor, the fragile, overwhelming power of love. Varen stood frozen, the small boy's gaze still locked with his own. Every muscle in his body ached with a strange tension, a storm of thoughts and emotions clashing inside him. He was the commander of the Orion Dominion, a being who had faced entire armies without flinching, who had enforced the strictest codes of law and honor. And yet here he was, powerless in front of a human woman and a child who looked strikingly like him. "Why are you holding him?" Varen's voice was rough, controlled. yet it betrayed the confusion boiling beneath the surface. "Do you know what you've done?" Mira's grip on the boy tightened slightly as if drawing strength from him. "I know," she said softly. "I know the rules. I know the risks. But I could not leave him alone. He had no one else." The words hit Varen like a wave crashing against steel. No one else. That simple phrase carried a weight he had never felt before. He had spent centuries believing that emotions were weaknesses, that attachments were distractions. And yet, Mira's simple act of care and defiance stirred something deep within him, a strange warmth, a burning guilt, and an unfamiliar sense of awe. He looked down at his son, taking in the small features that mirrored his own sharp jaw, his dark eyes, and the faint curve of his lips. The boy's tiny hands reached up instinctively, brushing against Varen's armor. Something inside him broke, a wall he hadn't realized he had built around himself crumbling with that innocent touch. How could you risk your life?" Varen asked, his voice softer now, laced with both anger and disbelief. "The Dominion would punish you. Severely." "I would face any punishment," Mira said without hesitation, "because he is innocent. He deserves to live. He deserves love." Varen's chest tightened. Her words were simple, yet they carried a power he had never encountered. Love. A concept he had always considered useless, irrelevant to strength or survival. And yet here it was, alive in her eyes, alive in the tiny, unafraid gaze of his child. He turned away for a moment, struggling with the storm inside. Anger, fear, pride, guilt, they all collided in a way that left him breathless. The rules of the Dominion were clear. A human servant could not make decisions like this. A child like this could not exist without consequences. And yet every instinct in him screamed to protect, to nurture, to hold what was his. Varen clenched his fists, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on him. This child was his blood, his future, and he had been absent. He had left the world unprepared to protect someone so fragile. And now he realized that strength alone would not be enough. This boy, small and delicate, needed more than power. He needed care, guidance, and above all, love. Mira watched him silently, sensing the inner battle raging behind his cold, commanding exterior. She had faced danger, threat, and punishment, yet her resolve never wavered. She understood something Varen was only beginning to grasp, that protecting the innocent required courage greater than any battle, greater than any conquest. The boy stirred again, cooing softly and reaching toward Varen. Something deep within him, a mixture of instinct and emotion, responded. He knelt slowly, bringing his face closer to the child. You are mine," he whispered, not as a demand, but as recognition. The words tasted strange, foreign, yet somehow necessary. Mira's eyes softened, a glimmer of relief and understanding shining in them. "And he is safe because I chose to care for him," she said gently. Varen felt a tremor in his chest, one that he could neither deny nor suppress. The human had challenged every belief he held, broken every rule, and yet she had done what no Orion could have done. She had touched his heart. In that quiet chamber, amid the hum of the ship, Commander Varen realized that strength was not only about dominance or control. Sometimes true strength was in surrendering to the unknown, in trusting others and in opening one's heart. And in that moment he knew that everything he had believed about weakness, fear, and power was about to change forever. The chamber felt colder than it had before, though the hum of the ship remained the same. Commander Varen's mind was in turmoil. Every instinct screamed at him anger, caution, control, but another quieter voice whispered a truth he had never admitted. This boy, fragile and small, was his son. And Mira, a human servant, had risked everything to protect him. "You know what you've done," Varen said, his voice low but sharp. "You've defied the Dominion's rules. If the Council discovers this, you could be punished. You could die." Mira met his gaze steadily, holding the child closer. Her human features were soft but determined, her eyes burning with courage he had never seen in his soldiers, let alone a servant. "I know," she said, "and I am ready for the consequences. But I could not let him suffer. He is innocent. He deserves protection." Varen's chest tightened. He had spent centuries enforcing order, crushing disobedience, and demanding absolute loyalty. Humans were tools meant to follow, not question. And yet, here stood one who had chosen to defy him, not out of rebellion, but out of care. care, a concept he had long dismissed as weakness. And yet in her actions he saw a strength far greater than any warrior's. He looked at the boy again. The small child's eyes were wide and trusting, staring at him without fear, without judgment. There was no arrogance, no strategy, no manipulation, just innocence. And in that innocence, Veyran felt something he had never felt before, a deep aching need to protect, to nurture, to keep this fragile life safe no matter the cost. You risked your life for him, Veyran said, his voice rough with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Do you understand what that means? Not just to me, but to the Dominion? You could have destroyed everything you know. Mira's grip on the child did not waver. I understand, she replied softly, but I could not stand by and do nothing. If the council sees him as a weakness, then so be it. But to me, he is everything. Veyran felt a burning in his chest, a strange combination of anger, awe, and guilt. He had left the boy vulnerable, and this human woman had stepped in, acting where he had failed. He had ruled with strength, but she had ruled with something far more powerful, courage born from love. He stepped closer, kneeling slightly so the boy could see him at eye level. The child's tiny hand reached toward Veyran instinctively, brushing against the armor covering his chest. The simple touch sent a jolt through him, breaking barriers he had built for centuries. Every command, every rule, every law of the Dominion suddenly felt hollow compared to the weight of this moment. You have made a choice, Veyran said slowly, almost to himself. A choice I would not have expected. A choice I cannot ignore. Mira's eyes softened, her lips curling into a faint, tired smile. Then make your own choice, Commander. Protect him, stand by him, and allow him to live. I cannot do it alone. Veyran felt a strange clarity. He had always believed that loyalty was earned through fear and power. But Mira's loyalty was different. It was voluntary, fearless, and unshakable, and it had changed everything. For the first time he realized that obedience without heart was meaningless, that strength without compassion was empty. Mira had risked everything not for power, not for recognition, but for love. And in that, she had shown him a kind of power he had never known. He rose slowly, towering over both of them, but the anger in his eyes was tempered by understanding. Very well, he said quietly. If anyone challenges him, or you, they will answer to me. No one will touch either of you without facing my wrath. Mira's eyes widened slightly, disbelief mixed with gratitude. The boy stirred, cooing softly as if sensing the shift in the room. Veyran's hand, massive and armored, hovered over the child, almost instinctively protective. In that moment, Commander Veyran understood something essential. Loyalty could not be commanded. Fear could not create love, and rules meant nothing when the heart had made its choice. And in that choice, he saw the beginning of a new kind of strength, one born not from conquest but from courage, care, and the willingness to protect life above all else. The chamber was quiet, save for the soft hum of the ship and the tiny breaths of the child in Mira's arms. Commander Veyran remained still, his eyes locked on the boy who stared back at him without fear. The connection between them was instantaneous, a thread invisible yet unbreakable, pulling at something deep inside him. He had faced countless enemies, battled in the deadliest of wars and seen planets burn, and yet nothing in his experience had prepared him for this small, fragile human child who carried a piece of him in his tiny hands, in his bright, unafraid eyes. Veyran knelt slowly before the boy, the metallic floor cold beneath his knees. He had never knelt before anyone, never in surrender, never in humility. But here instinct and emotion demanded it. The boy lifted a small hand and touched Veyran's armored chest, his fingers brushing lightly against the cold metal. The sensation was electric. It was as if a current ran from the boy straight into Veyran's heart, dissolving walls he had spent centuries building. A shiver ran through him, not of fear but of recognition, an understanding that went beyond words or logic. Mira watched silently, her expression calm but full of emotion. She had seen this moment coming, had felt it in the child's gaze long before Veyran did. The bond was undeniable, and she knew that the Orion commander, for all his strength and pride, could not ignore it. You are mine, Veyran whispered, his voice low, almost a growl, yet softened by awe. The words were strange on his tongue, foreign, yet they carried a weight heavier than any order he had ever given. He did not mean ownership in the way the Dominion taught, but recognition, acknowledgement of what was undeniable. This child was his, not because of power or law, but because of blood and connection. The boy's lips curled slightly into a smile, and a tiny laugh escaped him, fragile but full of life. Mira's eyes glistened as she watched, and for a moment, the three of them were suspended in a world where nothing else mattered. Varen felt emotions he had never known. Pride, yes, but also fear. Fear of failing this small life entrusted to him. Fear of the Dominion's judgment. Fear of the future. And yet beneath it all, there was an unshakable determination forming in his heart. He would protect this boy no matter the cost, no matter the danger. "You are safe," Varen said softly, almost to himself, almost as a promise. "I will make sure nothing harms you. Not now, not ever." Mira stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. Her voice was soft yet firm. "We can protect him together." For a moment, Varen simply looked at her. Humans were fragile, yes, but Mira had shown him a strength that rivaled any Orion warrior. She had faced danger without hesitation, defied the rules without fear, and loved without limits. And in that, Varen understood something he had never learned in centuries of command. Courage and love were stronger than fear, stronger than power, stronger than rules. The child shifted in Mira's arms, reaching for Varen again. This time he took the boy gently, cradling him close. The warmth of his small body, the trust shining in his eyes, filled Varen with a feeling he could not name. It was not conquest, not duty, not pride. It was connection. Pure, unbreakable, and transformative. Varen looked into the boy's eyes, and in them he saw the future. A future that was not defined by fear or power, but by love and choice. Mira's presence beside him, steady and unwavering, reminded him that strength did not come from isolation or dominance. It came from trust, care, and the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. In that moment, Commander Varen, the Orion who had conquered worlds and feared nothing, understood a truth far greater than victory or rule. Some bonds could not be broken, some hearts could not be hardened, and some connections once formed would last beyond time itself. He held the child closer, feeling the fragile warmth against his armored chest, and whispered, "Together, we will face whatever comes." And in the quiet hum of the ship, for the first time in his life, Commander Varen felt complete. Word of the child could not stay hidden forever. Rumors spread through the Orion Dominion like wildfire, reaching the ears of the Council, the most powerful governing body of the Empire. For them, a human child in the care of a high-ranking Orion commander was not just unusual, it was unacceptable. It was a threat to their laws, their pride, their very concept of strength. Varen knew this day would come. He had prepared for battle against enemies from distant worlds, against treachery within his own ranks. But nothing could have prepared him for the challenge that now loomed, defending his own son against those who saw him as a weakness, and a human woman who had dared to defy tradition to protect what was right. The council convened in the Grand Hall, a massive chamber of steel and light that stretched far above the heads of those present. Varen entered with the boy cradled in one arm and Mira by his side. Whispers filled the hall, but Varen ignored them. Every eye was on him, judging, questioning, waiting for a sign of hesitation. "Commander Varen," the council leader's voice echoed, sharp and commanding. "It has come to our attention that you have allowed a human, a servant, to raise a child in direct violation of Dominion law. Explain yourself." Varen stood tall, his massive frame unyielding, yet the weight of the situation pressed on him. He looked down at the child, feeling the tiny heartbeat against his chest. He saw the trust and innocence in his son's eyes, and he knew that no law, no punishment, no threat could make him abandon this responsibility. "This child is mine," Varen said, his voice low but firm, carrying the power of command and conviction, and Mira saved him. "If any harm comes to either of them, you will answer to me, not the law. I am responsible, and I will bear the consequences." Gasps echoed through the hall. Some council members' eyes widened in shock. Others hardened with anger. Humans were considered inferior, incapable of loyalty, incapable of judgment. And yet here stood Mira, calm, resolute, unwavering. "Commander," the council leader said, his tone icy, "you are risking the honor of the Dominion. By protecting a human child, you invite weakness into our ranks. You threaten everything we have built." Varen's gaze swept across the council. He could see the fear behind their words, the rigidity that had kept the Dominion strong but also blind. Strength, he realized, was not just in rules or dominance. Strength was in courage and loyalty and protecting those who could not defend themselves. "I do not fear weakness," Varen said. "I fear injustice. I fear cruelty. This child did not choose to be born into our world. He is innocent, and anyone who dares to harm him will face my wrath." The council faltered. They had never seen him speak with such emotion, such defiance. Varen's usual cold, calculated presence had been raw and unyielding. Mira stepped forward, her voice steady. "I protected him because it was the right thing to do. No law, no tradition, no fear could make me abandon him. He is alive because of choice, not fear. And Commander Varen stands with me." The boy stirred in Varen's arms, reaching for Mira. In that simple gesture, a ripple of awe moved through the council. The child was not just a symbol of defiance, he was a symbol of courage, of love, of a new kind of strength that no rules could define. Varen lowered his gaze to his son, feeling a wave of emotion that shook him to the core. "He is mine," he whispered. "And I will not allow anyone to harm him, not now, not ever." The council could argue, they could threaten, they could demand obedience. But the truth was unshakable. This small human child had already changed the greatest Orion warrior. Varen's strength now came not from fear or power, but from the bond he shared with his son and the human who had risked everything to protect him. In the silence of the Grand Hall, it became clear the Dominion could try to challenge him, but they could never undo the connection forged in that chamber, the connection that had given Varen a new purpose, a new strength, and a reason to fight that went beyond duty. And for the first time in his life, Commander Varen realized that the greatest battles were not fought in space, but in the heart. The chamber was quiet now, long after the council's confrontation had ended. The grand doors of the hall closed with a soft metallic hiss, leaving Commander Varen, Mira, and the boy alone. The tension that had filled the room slowly dissolved, replaced by a fragile calm. Yet the weight of what had transpired lingered heavily on Varen's shoulders. He looked at Mira, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the ship's ambient lights. There was no fear in her eyes now, only quiet determination, a strength born of love and conviction. He realized with a start that he had never truly understood humans. He had seen them as weak, as fragile, as beings who needed protection, but Mira, she had shown him something far more powerful than any Orion warrior he had ever commanded. Courage that came from the heart, unwavering even in the face of danger. Why did you risk everything for him?" Varen asked, his voice low, almost uncertain. His usual commanding tone was gone, replaced by a vulnerability he had never allowed himself to feel. Mira looked down at the child, cradled in her arms, then back at him. "Because even the strongest warrior cannot protect a child who has no one to believe in him," she said softly. Her words carried a weight that made Varen's chest tighten. "You didn't know, but I did. And I could not ignore it. Someone had to protect him, and I chose to be that someone." Varen felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. Guilt, admiration, and something deeper, something he did not yet have a name for, swirled together in a whirlwind of emotion. He had left the child vulnerable, unaware of the dangers that lurked in their world, and this human had stepped in without hesitation. She had acted not for reward, not for recognition, but out of love. He reached out slowly, almost tentatively, placing a massive armored hand on Mira's shoulder. I did not expect this," he admitted. "I thought I understood strength, loyalty, courage, but you have shown me something I never knew existed." Mira's eyes softened. "Strength is not always measured by how much you can destroy," she said. "Sometimes it's measured by how much you can protect, how much you can care, how much you can risk for someone else." Varen nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. He looked down at the child, who had shifted slightly, reaching his tiny hands toward him. "And I see it now," Varen said, his voice rough with emotion. "I see it in him, and I see it in you. I do not know what the future holds, but I will not allow harm to come to either of you." Mira placed the child gently into Varen's arms. The boy cooed softly, nuzzling against the commander's chest. Varen's massive hands cradled him carefully, a tenderness he had never imagined possible. The small weight of the child, the warmth of his tiny body, and the trust in his eyes filled Varen with a sense of purpose that was overwhelming and humbling at the same time. "You are safe with me," Varen whispered, almost to himself, almost as a vow. "I will not fail you again, Mira stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Her touch was reassuring, grounding him. "You will not be alone in this," she said. "We will protect him together. That is what matters now." Varen's heart, hardened over centuries of war and conquest, felt something he had never felt before: gratitude, trust, and the quiet stirrings of love. Mira had shown him that true courage was not about domination or fear, but about caring, risking, and standing by those who needed you most. For the first time, Varen allowed himself to feel fully. Not as a commander, not as a warrior, not as a leader of the Orion Dominion, but as a father, a protector, a man who had been shown the power of love by a human woman who refused to be afraid. In that quiet chamber, aboard a ship that spanned the stars, a connection formed that would never be broken. Commander Varen understood now that some bonds were stronger than any law, any rule, any threat. And for the first time in his life, he felt the future, not as a burden, but as a promise. He looked down at his son, then back at Mira, and whispered softly, "Together, we will face whatever comes. Together, we are stronger than any threat." And in the glow of the ship's lights, amidst the hum of distant stars, Commander Varen felt hope, the first hope he had known in centuries, blossoming in his heart. Days passed on the flagship, but the world outside remained unchanged. The Orion Dominion still followed its rigid codes. The Council still whispered of disobedience, and enemies still lurked in the shadows of distant galaxies. Yet inside the chamber where Commander Varen, Mira, and the child resided, a different world had begun. A world shaped not by fear, rules, or power, but by trust, love, and choice. Varen watched Mira as she cared for the child, her movements gentle but confident. Every gesture, every look reminded him of the courage she had shown when she first cradled his son. He remembered that moment vividly, the one when he had discovered her holding the boy and how it had changed everything. Mira had defied laws, risked her life, and acted with a heart full of courage. And in that choice, she had taught Varen something far greater than any lesson he had learned from victory or conquest. He realized that the Dominion could challenge him, the Council could object, and the universe could throw its threats at them endlessly. But no force could undo what had been forged in those quiet moments of love and connection. This small human child, so fragile yet fearless, had become the center of his existence. And Mira, steadfast and unwavering, had become more than a servant. She was a partner, a protector, and a guide in a world he had never truly understood. Varen knelt before the boy one evening, holding him close. The child's tiny hands grasped at his armor, tugging gently, while his bright eyes shone with trust and curiosity. "You are stronger than you know," Varen whispered. "Not because of power, not because of skill, but because of courage. Courage to face the world, to trust and to love." The boy gurgled happily, pressing his face against Varen's chest. Mira watched silently, a smile touching her lips, knowing that this moment was more than comfort. It was foundation. Foundation for a life that would challenge rules, rewrite expectations, and embrace the impossible. Varen turned to Mira, his eyes softer than they had ever been. "You taught me something humans call love," he said quietly. "I did not know I could feel this. But now I do, and I will not let it fade. Not for him, not for you, not for myself." Mira stepped closer, placing her hand over his. "We will protect him together," she said. "No matter what comes. The Council, the enemies, the universe itself. We will face it as one. He will grow knowing love, safety, and courage." Varen nodded, a rare smile forming on his lips. For centuries he had defined himself by strength and control. Now he understood that the greatest strength came from something far deeper: connection, loyalty, and the willingness to risk everything for someone else. The child stirred in his arms, letting out a small laugh. Varen's heart swelled. He held the boy closer, feeling the fragile weight, and whispered, "You are the future, little one, and nothing, no rule, no fear, no enemy, can take that away." Mira joined them, her presence steady and reassuring. Together, the three of them formed a bond stronger than any law, any army, any galaxy-spanning empire. It was a bond forged in courage, in defiance, in love, and in choice, a bond that no force could ever break. Varen looked out at the stars through the ship's viewports. Countless worlds, countless threats, and countless possibilities stretched before them, and yet he did not feel fear. He felt hope. He felt purpose. He felt a new kind of power, born not from dominance or conquest, but from something far more profound. The connection between hearts, the protection of life, and the courage to stand for what is right. In the quiet hum of the flagship, Commander Veyron understood that he had been given a gift no victory or battle could ever match. The human woman who had risked everything, the child who carried a piece of him in his bright eyes, and the bond they shared, they were his true strength. And together, they would face whatever the universe had to throw at them, not with fear, not with force, but with love. In that moment, the commander, the human, and the child, three souls from different worlds,